everyone, and welcome to the amazing. I'm Haley Carter. I'm thrilled to be moderating today's conversation with an incredible group of panelists. This conversation is called Building Brighter Futures in K-12 with Employer Partners and Apprenticeships. And we're so thrilled to have each and every one of you listening in. Of course, please use the chat feature to introduce yourselves. If you'd like to share your favorite Thanksgiving dish, would love to read those as well. But today we're really joined by some visionary leaders in the K-12 apprenticeship space. And we'll be exploring why apprenticeships matter in the K-12 space, how they work, and what it takes to sustain them. A quick note before we're jumping in, we will have time for a Q&A at the end. So please feel free to use the Q&A box and drop in any questions there, or of course, use the chat to ask questions live there or just to say hi. Before we get to know the panelists, would love to know all of you. So let's see who's in the room. And if you could take a moment in the chat and just share what role do you play in your apprenticeship ecosystem and in this space overall. So if you wouldn't mind sharing, would love to learn more about the audience so we can tailor this conversation a bit better. I'll give folks another minute to respond to that. Amazing. I've enjoyed seeing a couple of chats come through. And please continue to chat throughout the webinar as well as submit those Q&As. I know we have a great group in the audience, so excited to learn more about each of you as well. I'll give you a lay of the land in terms of where we're headed for the session goals. We are going to explore 1, why K-12 apprenticeships matter, how they engage students, meet employer needs and strengthen communities. 2, what make apprenticeships work, the key partnerships and strategies for success. And 3, how to sustain and scale success through collaboration, policy, and community action. So speaking of goals, let's hear from you in the chat. Share where you are in your apprenticeship journey. Maybe if you've worked with K-12 apprenticeships, you can do yes or a Y for yes and N for no. And you can also share if you're just starting to explore. So that'd be an A, or B, if you have a program in progress, or C, if you have an established program. So excited to learn a bit more on that front as well. So we'll give you time to chat that. Amazing. I see some different responses coming through. As a reminder, it's Y for yes, if you have worked with K-12 apprenticeships before, and then also if you want to reflect where you are in your journey. A is just starting to explore, B is program in progress, and C is established program. So let folks chat. I'm seeing a lot of explorers here, a couple programs in progress, really exciting to see. Amazing, some established programs set up as well. Perfect. Love hearing all these responses. Well, I think it is time to kick off the panel. So I'm going to be inviting each panelist up to introduce themselves and share a bit about the work that they are doing in the space. First up is Christopher Byam, Executive Director of Oakmont Education, who's been a leader of launching K-12 apprenticeships across Iowa. Chris, do you want to tell us a bit more about yourself?
Yes, good afternoon. It's nice to see everybody here. I'm really excited to talk about the apprenticeship space in general. I've been in K-12 education for roughly 20 years. Started in the Des Moines Public Schools as a business teacher, and definitely saw the need for continuing to build partnerships throughout the community. From there, I was an assistant principal at East High School in Des Moines, and then was a high school principal for 7 years in Boone, where we created the Boone Edge program. From there, I also had an opportunity to work for Iowa Workforce Development, where I helped create the Teacher Para Educator Registered Apprenticeship Program, as well as the Iowa Health Careers Registered Apprenticeship Program, and then also had the opportunity to write the legislation for the State Apprenticeship Agency. As of late, I've built a school, a charter school, public charter school here in Des Moines for Opportunity Youth that really focuses on work-based learning and CTE as a driving mechanism to try to bring students back into education. So I look forward to talking about all these things.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chris. Next, let's hear from Dana Curtin, St. Vrain Valley School District's P-Teach Coordinator. We'd love to hear more about you.
Hi, I'm Dana Curtin. I am the P-Teach coordinator at St. Vrain Valley Schools. We have a pathway to teaching that involves our high school students, college apprentices, as well as our paraeducators who are wanting to get their teaching degree.
Wonderful. Amazing to learn more about you. Oh, perfect. And here's your bio. I'm glad folks can see that as well. But we showed a preview to MK Sagara Barrett. Thrilled to learn more about you today as well, if you'd willing to introduce yourself.
Sure, yes. I am MK Sagaria Barrett. I'm a consultant with craft education as well as CareerWise, and I've spent the last decade supporting the launch of youth apprenticeships in Colorado in particular, developing out more than 35 pathways for young people to engage in apprenticeships, and most recently supporting the first teacher degree apprenticeship in the state of Colorado, and excited to share some of my learnings today.
Thank you so much. And finally, let's hear from Chad Smith, Chief Personal Officer of Plastic Recycling, Inc., an employer that's partnered with the Modern Apprenticeship Program to support many apprenticeships in the K-12 space.
All right, thanks for having me today. Yeah, I've got all HR and leadership development, people development here at our manufacturing company in Indianapolis. Spent 20 years in the military. The last few years spent a lot in the schoolhouse environment, and I grew up in a family of educators, so this is kind of a natural fit for me here. When I got to our company 6 years ago, this youth apprenticeship thing was just kind of starting to get off the ground, and we became an early adopter of it. And I'm excited to share more about some of the programs that we've been using here later today.
Thank you so much. As you can hear and see, we have an incredible group of panelists here. So excited to really ground in the why. Why are schools and employers turning to apprenticeships to connect education and work, for example? And so this panel, we're really going to dive into these K-12 systems, employers, and communities, and how each can really invest in apprenticeship pathways right now. So we're going to start off with a panel question to Chris. Chris, you've seen firsthand how early career exposure and apprenticeships can re-engage students. What impact have you seen on student motivation as well as community outcomes?
I think it's one of the most important factors is that community piece that you're talking about. Oftentimes, there's so many times where you have employers not necessarily getting to the schools, and the schools not necessarily paying attention to what are the changes that need to be taken place. And so one of my biggest aha moments was when I realized that I was building my educational programs to help support our business partners and to help support our community. And one of the things, obviously, one of the biggest thing that they kept talking about were the self-awareness, the good habits that need to be taking place, throughout the whole system. So one of the things that we really talked about as a system in general is creating the habits from a very young age when we start talking PK all the way through where we're starting to get some exposure for students and experiences kind of in the middle school area. And then in high school, really starting to work on training with our business partners. So we started creating registered apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship programs that really delved into what our business partners were telling us they needed, as well as what the community needed. One great example was a special education student that was not engaged in school at all. And that partnership with that, the business partnership with that plumbing company that he told us that he wanted to work for, and then where we were able to build that pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship program with that company, all of a sudden, the employer was like, "You're gonna have to go to your English class. If you don't show up to your English class, don't show up to the job site." And he wanted to make that job owner so proud that he started to re-engage with school. And I think utilizing your partners like that, utilizing your community to really engage the students and show them these are the habits that need to be developed in order to be successful, and really closing that gap between education and the community. Oftentimes we don't listen as educators, so we need to make sure that we're listening to our community and what our business partners need.
Thank you so much. And what a powerful anecdote. It sounds like you're really making a difference across the students and full community through your work. Building on that, MK, you've tackled this from a systems perspective. So you've really helped bridge workforce shortages in diverse communities from Denver to rural Colorado. What makes RAPs effective at connecting local needs to opportunities?
Yeah, I want to start with this idea that for apprenticeships to be successful, they really have to be driven by the employers. So because of this, there's a great deal of tailoring that can happen in an apprenticeship program that can make it unique and aligned to the needs of the employer and their context. In fact, I would say no two registered apprenticeship programs should be exactly the same. Similar, sure, and built on similar foundations and models, absolutely, but they really should be tailored to the flavor of that community. So you'll see two maps up here on your screen. And this is the work on the left of CareerWise and our footprint across the country. And then also on the right is the CareerWise Teacher Apprenticeship Program. And one of the things I'll share on the map of Colorado, we have a pretty prescriptive program in our state per legislation for our teacher apprenticeship program. But there's a lot of local control in Colorado. So we have 179 school districts. Dana is part of one of those, and additional charter schools. And they all engage in this program differently. So some of our urban districts implement the program largely with the goal of diversifying their workforce and making sure that their teachers reflect their student bodies. Some of our rural districts really are trying to ensure that their long-term subs are upskilled and ultimately in the right licensure requirements for teaching. So that's an example of one program that's modified per its geography. And then I'll share one more anecdote. We have CareerWise has programs in New York City as well as Elkhart, Indiana. And New York City has a lot of big enterprise employers that use the CareerWise youth apprenticeship model, like JP Morgan Chase and Amazon. And those New York City schools are using their CTE high schools to really plug into business, finance, and IT roles. Differently, Elkhart County, actually 85% of all RVs in North America are produced there. So that youth apprenticeship program, while using the same foundational model, is really focusing on manufacturing and getting talent from schools into those programs. So just an example of how you really need to tailor it to fit your local context.
Thank you for those clear examples. It sounds like certainly tailoring the program across a specific state is very important. So appreciate learning more about that. Before we pass it over to Dana, I'd love to hear from the audience. Feel free to drop in the chat one challenge or opportunity apprenticeships could help address in your community. And per MK's point, think about the local needs of the community, of course, but excited to hear a bit more. We'll give folks a bit of time to answer that, and then we'll be heading over to Dana's perspective. It was chatted in the chat, the question, so excited to see some responses here. It can be quick responses, paragraphs, whatever you're excited to share. Amazing. Well, I'll let people mull that over as we continue on. And if folks have ideas, don't be shy. And of course, you can type it in the chat whenever works best. But we'd love to bring it to the classroom level now. And Dana, you've led the creation of teacher apprenticeships. This is I'm very excited to learn more about this as a past teacher. How does showing students a clear path into teaching reshape how they see their futures?
So being able to explore and be in those classrooms as high school students allow our students to figure out if teaching is the profession for them before they invest the time and money in a college program. We have 80% of our students saying that they want to continue on and become a teacher. We're not looking to make that 100%. Because just as it's super important for us to provide those additional opportunities for students to explore things in high school, it also has to be okay for them to be like, ooh, I explored this and this is not what's for me. So I think that's part of it. So we were at a conference and had a student panel with some of our students and some students from some other districts in different teacher pathways. And one of the students was asked, well, they were all asked, but one of our students answered in terms of what P-Teach has taught him and meant to him. And he shared that it made him want to try. So having that connection, figuring out, you know what, this is what I want to do. That's made him want to try, not just in our classes, but then in his other high school classes. And that's a story that we hear over and over again in P-Teach. Esley, who you see in this picture, she came to us in high school and is now one of our college apprentices. If we had had a GPA requirement for our program, Esley would not have made that cut because she didn't see the purpose to her high school classes. Being in P-Teach classes changed that for her. She could see herself being successful in college and becoming a teacher. So she's now been recognized for her outstanding grades in her college cohort and is getting ready to start her student teaching next year. So by having programs that allow students to explore what they're looking to do in high school, it can really help them engage in the other parts of their high school day as well.
Thank you so much for that powerful story. It's wonderful, the impact you're driving, and sounds really remarkable. So I appreciate it. Now, Chad, you've shared that Plastic Recycling Inc. saw real value in partnering with Modern Apprenticeship Program to grow your future workforce. From an employer standpoint, why do apprenticeships in the K-12 space matter? And how do they help companies like yours build a sustainable, high-quality talent pipeline?
Yeah, so I'll kind of hit big picture first, and then I'm going to kind of dive into Christina and Danny's experiences here. So I think why do they matter? The early career exposure is huge up front. We're in the manufacturing side here at our plant, but getting young folks experience early on to see what is possible, what they could do, what they can't do, what they like, what they don't like, right? I think that's a good thing that they can learn early before kind of what we were talking about earlier, making decisions that could impact them financially that they may not really like. The other part is skill development. This is skill development beyond the classroom. So they're going to learn a lot of some of the soft skills that you need to be successful in a workplace. And you know, a lot of them play sports or in the band or things that they learn there. They're going to learn really quick. They transfer into the workplace. And so being able to be on a team and know that you're not going to get along with everybody, and this personality is a little bit different than the other, those are huge benefits that maybe they don't even realize at the time that they're picking up right away. The other thing is the opportunity. Like it's an opportunity for a lot of folks that probably otherwise wouldn't get the opportunity. So some of our apprentices have come from just tougher backgrounds that just maybe didn't have the support that they needed, and that, they're used to working in, the fast food industry or something like that, that might not have given them an opportunity that they're getting here. And that's always great to see. And then, from the company perspective, the social corporate responsibility and our desire to work more with the community is a driver for sure. And I think what we've learned in the process is, while we went into this from a company perspective thinking we're doing this really nice thing for the community and helping, K through 12 out, we're getting better. We are better. We are a better company because of the apprentices that we've brought on board. And, Christina, I'll share her story. She interviewed with us in this modern apprenticeship program as a sophomore in high school, second semester of her sophomore year. And she interviewed for our HR apprentice role in my department. And in her interview, she asked the question, "I don't really know what HR is," right? Like, that's the question she asked, which kind of tells you, like, she hadn't had a lot of exposure to those things. And the picture that you see there under Christina's story was this past summer. After having been in the program for 3 years, she had watched myself and our HR manager facilitate onboarding for our new employees for the last 3 years. And she finally had gotten to the point where she wanted to do an onboarding for all of our Spanish speaking employees who had never gotten to go through onboarding before, because I don't speak Spanish, nor does our HR manager. And so that picture I took sitting from behind, and that was like as proud a moment as I've had here. Watching a young lady who 3 years ago didn't know what HR was, and now she's leading and facilitating a full day of onboarding to our Spanish speaking employees who are better understand what we're doing across the company more than they ever have before. So that's just kind of a full circle story for her. And Danny's much the same way. He came from an inner city high school here in Indianapolis, worked on our production lines for a few years, learned them all really fast, but was hungry for more. And we ended up putting him in our research and development lab, which is where that picture is taken, which is like our high-end technology. Everything runs on apps, which young people are very prepared to work on apps. They're so used to doing that during the day. So he was a great fit for us up there. So that's a couple of the personal stories for us.
Those are really powerful stories. I appreciate you sharing both of those, Chad. So I believe all the panelists really have now made a strong case for why apprenticeships matter. So we're now going to be shifting into how apprenticeships work in terms of what partnerships and structures make them successful. We know apprenticeships thrive when schools, employers, intermediaries, and other key stakeholders each play their part. So we'll be diving into how to build and maintain these partnerships and how to align these goals across all stakeholders. So going to start diving into this topic with MK here. So MK, you often describe intermediaries as a connective tissue in wrapped ecosystems. Can you share a bit about your metaphor and help us understand what makes this partner role so critical in launching and scaling programs?
Sure. This slide that you see in front of you is all of the partners, and there are even more, I would say, that come together to really make apprenticeships successful. And intermediaries here are the background, as you just shared, connective tissue that I believe can really help bridge some of these disparate groups. So not all, like Chad is a great example of an employer that sees the need to connect with K-12, but that doesn't always happen. And so sometimes you really need folks to interpret across these different groups. And intermediaries can do just that. They can provide technical assistance. They can be a connection bridge builder, and really help expedite the rollout of an apprenticeship. I will also say intermediaries can act as more than just this background space. They can actually play the role of a sponsor, for example, or in Washington State, the teacher apprenticeship program there is facilitated by the union. So that is one of the dots on this model. They are working with K-12 and they are sponsoring that. So again, you can play a lot of roles. If you click to the next slide, you'll see just some ways that CareerWise as an intermediary has supported our programming across the state of Colorado. We do a lot of work in the policy space to support legislation that is friendly to apprenticeships and work-based learning. We convene partners. We support funding and secure funding for our partners. We do a lot of project management. We, of course, are the program sponsor for most of our apprenticeships. And we collect data and then report out on that so that we can all learn from the challenging things and the successful things of this work.
Thank you for sharing that helpful framework. Super interesting. Dana, you've built higher education partnerships, strong higher education partnerships with CU Denver to support teacher apprenticeships for both high school and post-secondary students, as you're sharing. What advice would you give to others aligning coursework with on-the-job learning?
I think it's so important to find a great partner. We are really lucky to work with CU Denver. We actually originally started as we were kind of exploring and setting out with CU Denver and utilizing our local community college. But CU at Denver was able to offer us discounted tuition that would continue to apply to our apprentices and our professionals, so our paraeducators taking classes after they graduated from high school, and that wasn't something that our community college could do. So making sure that you find that right partner for your program. I'd also encourage you to look at the needs of your program. A lot of times your higher ed institution is already going to have like, oh, well, this is our set classes that we allow you to teach through, a concurrent enrollment in your district, or this is the set that typically goes with this. So really thinking about your program needs and communicating with the higher ed institution to come up with what is the best fit of classes for your program versus what has typically been done in the past. The flip side of that is we have a lot of first-generation college students. So about 60% of our apprentices are first-generation college students. So we're working together with our higher ed partner, with CU Denver, around supports for our first-gen students, but then we're also providing those supports within the district. Even though CU Denver has great things there on campus for first-generation students, we found that we had the need to provide that ourselves within our apprenticeship with people that our students already had relationships with.
Thank you. A really interesting perspective. Chris, as a high school leader who's built systems to connect students directly with apprenticeship opportunities, how can districts design and align learning pathways in CTE so they truly prepare students for success in real workplace settings, and therefore make it easier for employees to really plug in and partner effectively?
I think one of the biggest things that I've learned over my career is that education in general is there to provide the service for workforce development in general. I think understanding that in an English class, when you're taking Romeo and Juliet, there's still context in terms of like if we're collaborating or we're communicating, that our business partners are talking about they want somebody that can collaborate, they want somebody that can communicate, and that in that English class, we can relate that to workforce development in some way, shape, or form. Basically pulling out the context, the standards of English, and then pulling out the workforce development piece simultaneously. So ultimately, your ultimate goal is for a business partner to see the core skills that our students are getting in our educational setting, so that we can honestly say, at graduation, our students will graduate with this. And usually, if done appropriately, you're going to bring your business partners in, you're going to bring community members in, and parents and teachers, and you're going to sit down and you're going to understand the core skills that are required in order for them to graduate, so that when Chad, for instance, says, I'm hiring from this school, I know exactly what types of students I'm going to be receiving, and the skills that they already know. And I think that's that component where sometimes education doesn't necessarily align with industry, and we need to close that gap so that we can provide that service to our business partners and our community. And so making sure that everything's aligned. And I think that's one of the things that we continue to do at Great Oaks, is that we're developing those students so that our students with Opportunity Youth have built or developed some kind of poor habits in general. And so the ultimate goal is to build them up, build some resiliency in them, and then get them into a business partner situation so that they can understand how to be successful post high school.
Thank you. Super powerful example of how important alignment is between education and employers. So appreciate you sharing that. Chad, before launching an apprenticeship program, gaining buy-in across the organization can be crucial for success. From your experience, what strategies or steps helped you build support from leadership and staff to really ensure that everyone was aligned, excited, and ready to make apprenticeship a meaningful experience for both the students and your company?
Yeah, so for us, it was definitely a top to bottom. Everybody needs to understand the why, really, of why we're investing in this. And this is, letting everybody know this is a long-term play, right? And to me, one of the advantages of this is of it being a long-term play is you've got time to shape and mold, right? We've spent so many years of kind of, you know, working with temp agencies, and a lot of it was just the same people kind of getting recycled, the same people coming in with the same bad habits, where you've got, young high school kids that are coming in that are coming from a learning environment. So they're already in that mindset, they're curious, and it's just a natural fit really to come over here and really shape them from nothing, right? You've got this ball of clay, and you can kind of shape them into the culture, have them fit into the culture, and teach them our processes and procedures. I think another really important thing early on, at least an area here in Indianapolis that I think businesses have struggled, and we're trying to get out there and get the word out, is there are so many false barriers that businesses come up with of not to do this youth apprenticeship thing. And it's everything from, oh, we can't bring people in under 18 because of insurance reasons. Well, there's so many, like, I've not found one person that actually, when they went and asked their insurance company that question, that they've maybe one that said, yeah, they can't do that. So there's that. There's the, we've got our Career Technical Education Center really close to us, has industrial maintenance type of skill sets that they're teaching. We bring them into our maintenance department. Well, originally when I talked about bringing them into maintenance, our maintenance team was like, no, they can't be around electricity and voltage and all this stuff. And, we go back and, like, they're around it at school. What's the difference whether they're at school or whether they're here? So, and there's obviously state laws and local laws everywhere you go. And of course, we're going to abide by those. But I think there's so many businesses that put these false barriers in front of themselves, including ours initially when I brought this up. But once you kind of knock all those down and see, wow, this is a lot easier than we think, that's a good thing to do. I think that a couple other things we did internally is we made sure we picked the right people that were going to be champions, that were supportive of this right from the get-go, and almost going overboard to over communicate, provide feedback to the students early on. That's really important. You don't want somebody fighting against you. So we kind of handpicked early on until we got the momentum. And speaking of momentum, the other thing that we did early on was we created the environment to have some early wins, right? early wins from the company seeing while they can contribute to have confidence in the programs, but also early wins in the student getting confidence like, holy cow, I can do this in a manufacturing environment. So I think those are really important to craft from both sides early on. And those are some of the things that we've done here.
Thank you. Super interesting to hear how you were really able to gain buy-in from the top down and ultimately create such a meaningful experience for the students and the company, of course. We'd love to hear from all of you in the audience on your partnerships. So we just had Chloe chat this question, but I'll repeat it as well. Where are you on your partnership journey? You can type A if you already have strong partners, B if you're actively building partnerships, or C if you're just getting started. And if you typed A or B, feel free to share the type of partner as well, such as an employer, college, or nonprofit. Excited to hear responses. We'll give folks a minute to do so before we hop into the next part of the panel. I'll let folks mull it over a bit and feel free to chat it as you get inspired to do so. But we are going to now hop into kind of our next session of how you sustain success together in the K-12 apprenticeship space. So we've talked about building strong partnerships, and now we're really going to discuss how to sustain these programs over time through collaboration, policy alignment, and community trust. Sustaining apprenticeships, of course, takes quite a bit of collaboration between all stakeholders involved. And so excited to explore how our panelists have helped their programs thrive long-term. And great to see a response in terms of the partnership journey as well. Thanks for sharing that, David. In terms of diving into sustaining success, MK, let's start with you to gain perspective from the intermediary role. Can you share with us what strategies are helping states and districts to sustain RAPs and expand equitable access at the policy level?
Sure. I would say some of the states that are making the most progress on sustaining and expanding equitable access to registered apprenticeships are doing two things. The first is really embedding apprenticeships into an education to workforce ecosystem through thoughtful policy. And then the second would be effectively braiding funding, because we all need access to money to make this work. So I'll highlight some of this in Colorado in particular. We really love our legislation in Colorado, and so we've passed dozens of bills in the past decade supporting workforce initiatives and apprenticeships. This includes everything from creating our state apprenticeship agency all the way down to changing the way we calculate seat time to make sure it includes work-based learning and apprenticeships. And the implementation of all of these bills has lived in various state departments, in our Department of Labor, Education, Higher Ed. And so recently our governor created an executive order that's intended to create workforce system coordination and align more strategically on weaving all of these disparate or one-off changes into a more aligned approach for the state. So that's one example of really ensuring workforce alignment across all aspects. And then I would say nothing underscores the idea of equitable access more than the need for accessing funding and resources. So I would say that braiding funding is a key component of sustaining apprenticeships. Figuring out how to leverage federal apprenticeship dollars, local apprenticeship dollars from state apprenticeship agencies, braiding Perkins CTE funding with Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act funding, or WIOA. And a lot of states, including Colorado, I know Arkansas does this, they have employer incentive funds available through tax credits for apprenticeship. So braiding funding is key. And I will say it's not easy to do this, but it can be really powerful when it's leveraged effectively. And I'll just add, for our teacher apprenticeships in Colorado, those apprentices that have leveraged this braided funding have covered the cost of all of their bachelor's degree, which is pretty impressive. And some have even tapped additional funding to pay for living expenses. So it can be really powerful. And last plug for intermediaries is that intermediaries can help you access funds and kind of navigate the wild west of the funding landscape.
Thank you for providing that state level lens, especially as it revolves around the importance of funding. Dana, let's talk about how this plays out at the district level, especially as needs shift from year to year. So you've shown how apprenticeships can help districts grow their own future workforce, particularly in teaching. How do you sustain momentum and keep your program aligned with changing staff needs and priorities over time?
So I think spend the time up front to get that district-wide support. We are so lucky that we are our own industry partner. That we know what those changing needs are. We're not having to find out from somebody else, so we can kind of prepare. And so we actually have shifted what classes we offer, how often we offer them. We've even worked with CU Denver to advocate to bring on a new, so we wanted to offer the math for elementary school teachers. That was really a need for us, for our paraeducators to have more knowledge around how students learn math and how to teach math. And so by working with CU Denver, we're adding that class next year. And so all of our college apprentices work as paraeducators. So they're going to have that class earlier than they would have typically in their progression. And so looking at, okay, what are the needs of our system? How can we respond to that? So that we can do that in a way that our students and our apprentices are ready to meet that need. We also have seen a real benefit from the district side. So when we first started our program, we had tons of paraeducator openings. So now utilizing our apprentices to fill those paraeducator openings, as well as offering these same opportunities to current paraeducators that are offered to our apprentices, that has really helped with retention of our paraeducators. So it really benefits both us as a district and an employer and the students and apprentices.
Thank you, Dana. Chris, as a school leader who's collaborated closely with many employers, what strategies have you found most effective for building lasting relationships with businesses and keeping apprenticeship programs responsive to these evolving community and industry needs?
It's probably as easy and as basic as saying listening. To be honest, it's listening to understand, not listening to respond. It's so important to hear what our community and our industry partners are saying and what they need, and then being able to be creative and innovative enough to adjust what you're doing as a system or as a school to make sure that you're satisfying the needs of your community and your business partners. And that, I mean, that happens in many different facets. We have industry meetings that we bring in based on, right now at the school that we built is construction trades, advanced manufacturing, and healthcare. In each one of those areas, we have a workforce advisory council, and we sit down with them. We show them the industry recognized credentials that we're doing. What are the things? What's the learning that needs to take place, and how can we align them to what your needs are, so that once again, it funnels out and we have a business partner that says, you know what, I know what they're getting from this school, and I understand, these are the habits that they're going to have, these are the skills that they're going to have, these are the credentials that they're going to have, and then it can align directly into whatever they need it to be. But it's as easy as listening to understand, and then being responsive to what's going on.
Thank you. The takeaways of being a partner who listens and really responding is a great takeaway. So appreciate you sharing that. Chad, sustaining a successful youth apprenticeship program requires, of course, long-term commitment, both to students and to the school partnerships that support them. Given that programs like Modern Apprenticeship can span several years, how do you and your team keep apprentices engaged and motivated as they grow into their roles? And what strategies have you found most effective for maintaining strong, ongoing communication with local schools and students throughout the journey?
Yeah, I'd say for the apprentices, building connections with them early and feedback often is really important. And this might sound kind of goofy, but when we do our initial interviews with some of the apprentices coming in, we want their parents coming in too. We're going to take their parents around the plant. We want their parents to be involved with where they're going to be and understand what they're going to be doing. So that's something that I think has helped us by getting the parents involved as well. But finding the right mentor for the apprentices keeps them engaged, and then just checking in on them every once in a while. I showed the picture of Danny earlier, who was on our production lines for a couple years, and because I got to know Danny over time, I got to see like kind of a disengagement coming along, and so we just sat down and talked, and he said he didn't feel like he was learning anything more, and he was kind of tired of doing the same thing every day. I'm like, okay, well, I went and talked to a few people after that, like, where can we put him where he's going to be engaged? And so our research and development department ended up being perfect for him. And somebody that was curious and wanting to learn new things was the best place for him. So certainly staying engaged. And then the other thing to keep the apprentices engaged and understanding is, I think one of the things we've learned over time is they're learning a lot more than they think they are. So sometimes just bringing them in and asking them what they think they've learned, and then they give some really basic answer. And so one of our apprentices right now is in our R&D lab learning all the colors of plastic, and there's a gazillion different colors, and there's machines that we use to develop these colors. And this project she's working on is helping us build like a catalog and pricing for customers, right? Well, if she doesn't understand the value that she's bringing to the company, that now we can go out and market a whole new line of colors because of what she's doing, then it's hard to put those things together. So I think when we sat down with her a couple weeks ago, she's like, whoa, I didn't realize I was doing that. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what you're doing. So from the student perspective, I think those are some of the ways to keep them engaged. From schools, we our workforce development agency here in Indy, Employ Indy, helps us greatly having that connective tissue with the schools. But also we've got some direct relationships with schools. So I myself sit on multiple different advisory boards at the schools for the career technical education, and I take our maintenance team leaders with me sometimes when they're looking at crafting curriculum maybe for the upcoming year. Hey, do we need to shift our focus to AI or automation or things like that? So that helps us stay engaged with what's being taught at the school, and I think that's a win-win, kind of back to what Chris was talking before, is the employers being engaged with the local schools. So those are just a few of the things I would say.
Thank you for sharing those clear examples of engaging the apprentices as well as the schools long term. That's really helpful context. We'd love to go back to the audience and hear from everyone in the chat feature. The question is, it was just chatted as well, when it comes to sustaining programs, what is your biggest local challenge? You can type 1 for funding, 2 for staffing, or 3 for coordination. And if your answer is neither of those 3, feel free to chat a separate answer as well. So Chloe chatted the question and would love to hear different perspectives on this question of the biggest local challenge when it comes to sustaining your programs. And we'll give folks a minute there to think it over. And then we'll be getting into one final question for each panelist. And after that, for context, we will be having the audience Q&A. So definitely would love to be able to have all of your questions answered. So definitely submit those in the Q&A box. And if you have any thoughts on the last chatted question, feel free to chat those as well. But we'll hop into this last question. All of these panelists have, of course, shared very rich insights, remarkable anecdotes, really highlighting the potential of apprenticeships across states, across schools, and the impact that they have had. So thank you to each panelist for sharing that. As a final question for each panelist, what's one piece of advice for those exploring or launching apprenticeships in K-12? And Chris can start with you.
Well, I would just say just do it. To be honest, it's very rewarding not only for the school, for the system, but for your community. And it is, like Chad said, it's easier said than done. Or not easier said than done. It's easier to put together um, than not doing it. I think there are a lot of situations where um, you can really build that collaborative environment that you really need within your community. And honestly, it fills a gap that's vastly needed in our school systems in general.
Thank you, Chris. MK, any thoughts on this one?
I would just say start small. You don't need, this does not need to be a huge program. You want it to be bite size, and you just find one partner who's excited, whether that's an employer or like an industry organization that wants to get in on it with you. Start small and find an intermediary, because they'll help you expedite the process.
Great tips. Chad?
Yeah, like my biggest surprise has been, like I said, it's been a win-win for the business and the students. And rarely do I feel like I get to do that a lot at work. I feel like somebody's always winning and losing. And, we went into this thinking we were doing this nice thing, and we are better. We're modernizing technology at our company. A lot, like I said, a lot of these things are running on apps now, and they're on apps every single day. They're training a lot of our older tenured employees right now. So the opportunities to get better and make this long-term sustainable pipeline is huge. The return on investment is, unbelievable. Don't wait, I guess, is what I would say.
We all love win-win, so definitely a good piece of advice there. Dana, would love your advice as well.
Yeah, that win-win spoke to me too. I think really it's realizing that the long-term benefits are going to outweigh the challenges of setting the program up. So know that you're going to have to put time in the beginning, but the benefits that you as an organization and students will get out of it in the end is totally worth it.
Wonderful. That was all really incredible advice and very helpful perspective. So appreciate each of you sharing. We have time for audience Q&A now. So if you have questions, please drop them in the Q&A box or here in the chat, and we'll queue them up. I'm excited to hear everyone's questions. And we'll kick off with a question of my own, kind of while we're waiting for audience questions. So for districts that want to start apprenticeship programs but aren't sure where to begin, what are the first steps you recommend to build early momentum and get employer partners on board? We'll let any panelists answer that if it speaks to them.
I'm happy to answer that. I think if you can bring in invite business partners, community members into like a lunch and learn or something like that, and just listen to what the needs are. And then you can start tying in to your different programs. What I found was I had it right underneath my nose, to be honest. I had bits and pieces of all different types of programs. And we actually did a meat cutting registered apprenticeship with a local grocery store. And that's what their hub was in the city that I was in. And we ended up building it so that 128 other school or other cities could utilize it if needed. But they needed it, we built it small, just like MK said. It literally was helping them with one kid. But we could see the possibilities of how it could branch out to all the other cities that had that grocery store available. And so, but it was right under us because we were using different competencies from different classes, and then we built it from the ground up, and really were able to mesh it to a meat cut. I mean, you don't think meat cutting in high school, right? There's 1,500 occupations you can choose from, so you can be very creative with the way that it looks.
Thank you. That's super helpful perspective, Chris. We have one question from David Baker that I'll share. What are some of your ways to share initial wins and ongoing program successes? And any panelists, feel free to chime in with that.
So we took advantage of other people's newsletters before we had our own newsletter. So just writing up something that could go out in already existing newsletters, whether it be a school that our apprentices are working in, their newsletter that was going out to families, the Office of Professional Development newsletter that goes out from the district to all the teachers, just to get the word out about our program. We now are able to have our own newsletter, but we still take the time to add those pieces into other people's newsletters as well, so they're hearing about the program. So it's not just people who already know about the program getting that reinforced, it's more people finding out about it.
And I'll add, the requirements of registering an apprenticeship also require you to collect a lot of data. And so you actually have a lot of data at your fingertips to pull from to showcase some of those wins, whether that's the increased salaries that folks are getting and how that's changing the apprentices' lives, whether that's taking time away from that mentor or journey person's role, so because the apprentice is gaining abilities on the job. Like, you have some of this data, and so showcase it. And then also local news media and media outlets love this kind of like great feeling story. So take this to your local TV station and say, would you like to do a piece, or your local radio or newspaper. I think these are easy wins for communities.
Great perspectives. Last question. How can schools and employers ensure that apprenticeship opportunities are equitable and accessible to all students, including those from underrepresented or rural communities? If any panelists would like to chime in on that before we wrap.
I can tackle that one because I've been in urban and rural areas. So I think it's just important, once again, to really evaluate your programs in general. I was noticing where there were gaps. We had programs for talented and gifted. We had programs for internship programs. We had all kinds of stuff, and I was noticing a gap. And so one of the things, and apprenticeships are for everybody. I think it's the messaging that needs to change in society in general, to be honest. As a school, I'm trying to open up as many opportunities as possible. And so whether it's apprenticeship, I think it was David that mentioned something about military earlier. But once again, it's like you're trying to open up as many pathways as possible, and college isn't necessarily for everybody. But there, once again, 1,500 apprenticeable occupations, and you find things that help your community and that are robust in nature, and you're not doing it, you're not creating this ginormous program to start with. It's small bits and pieces, and it'll grow itself, it'll sell itself, and it'll support and help all students if you build it correctly. I'm not sure if I answer the question completely, but
I think that's a great answer and great closing thought. We want to, of course, thank these exceptional panelists for taking the time to share their insights, as well as everyone in the audience for listening in. Before we close, we'd love your feedback in the chat. So type 1 if you're leaving with a new idea, or 2 if you're planning to connect with a new partner after today. And hopefully lots of you are leaving with these new ideas or excitement towards partnerships and apprenticeships. But thank you all for sharing, panelists, as well as thank you for contributing your thoughts, audience, and really appreciate everyone taking the time today. Amazing. Just as a final thank you again, Chris and MK, Dana, Chad, for such wonderful perspectives shared today. And apprenticeships really do show us what's possible when education and work align to open doors for every student. So everyone in the audience, you'll receive a follow-up email with the recording and different resources. And on behalf of Craft Education, thanks again and enjoy the rest of your day. Don't forget to fill out the survey or share your one or two while you're exiting.